So we are thrilled to kick off the research forum tonight with OvCAN, continuing to drive research progress in Canada. It is my pleasure to introduce you to Dr. Alicia Tone, OvCAN Project Manager and Scientific Advisor with Ovarian Cancer Canada, and she is joined by Dr. Barb Vanderhyden, member of Ovarian Cancer Canada Board of Directors and Chair of the Research Committee. Dr. Vanderhyden also chairs the OvCAN Governing Council. Welcome, Dr. Tone and Dr. Vanderhyden, and I will turn it over to you.
Thank you, Stephanie. It is my great pleasure, and Alicia's, I'm sure, too, for us to have this opportunity to describe some of the research that has been made with OvCAN over the last 4 years. It's hard to believe that we are more than 4 years in and that OvCAN is scheduled to finish next March. Next slide, please. So OvCAN did begin with a $10 million allocation from the federal government in 2019. And we have been very fortunate to have partnerships that have brought that amount almost to $14 million. There were 3 priorities that we had set, how we were going to spend that money and hopefully to have the most impact on patient care. And those 3 priorities include development of research models, then the use of those research models to test novel treatments, and then ideally moving the most promising novel treatments into personalized clinical trials. I'm very pleased to say that we have funded 44 projects altogether with the funding that OCC has garnered over the last few years. And that includes 25 research models, 13 preclinical studies, and 6 clinical trials. I think one of the most interesting things about OvCAN, the greatest achievement, let's say, is that it took a fledgling ovarian cancer research community and brought it to full speed together to work collectively and collaboratively, and as well as bringing on 20 patient partners who are actively engaged at every step of the way. And you're going to hear a little bit more about that later. Next slide. So the 250 researchers really are from coast to coast. I was marveling at the location of all the individuals who were saying they're here, from there. And you can see that the researchers are really indeed from coast to coast, from Brad Nelson out in Victoria, BC, to Jeanette Boudreau in Halifax. And so wherever you have come from, hopefully you can find the faces there of some of the researchers that are involved in ovarian cancer research and part of OvCAN funded projects. It really has been the most dynamic opportunity that we've ever had to all work together to achieve some common goals. Next slide. So we have invested in all types of ovarian cancer. We put a high priority on ensuring that there would be attention given not only to the most common, which is high-grade serous ovarian cancer, but also to take the opportunity to build model systems, to develop new treatment ideas, and to even bring on clinical trials that would be open to individuals with other types of ovarian cancer. And so you can see clear cell and endometrioid, low-grade serous, mucinous. And I think most importantly, there's one there, the small cell carcinoma of the ovary, that has rarely been studied until very recently. Now we've got projects going that are studying that rarest of ovarian cancer. Next slide. So I'll talk about priority 1 first. We just have 1 slide to describe everything that's been done. And I can tell you that it has been a boondoggle, let's say, in terms of all the things that have been done. And now the opportunities are to build new treatments based on those models. We have no less than 38 new models that have been developed for ovarian cancer. And they include all different kinds of models of all different kinds of ovarian subtypes. And we've pulled out one of the more promising ones that you'll get to hear about a little later on from Dr. Jeanette Boudreau, one of our newest investigators, and she really has a cool model that I'm hoping you're going to enjoy hearing about. We also have put a lot of investment into profiling the DNA, RNA, and protein of those tumors, as well as the immune cells. How are the immune cells talking to each other within those tumors? And that is telling us a lot about how did these cancers begin? How did they form? And more importantly, why are they resistant to some treatment? Why won't they be killed when a treatment is given? And you're going to hear one of those stories in much greater detail from Dr. Mark Carey later on, who's going to try to give us a better understanding of what determines the response to targeted treatment in a rare type of ovarian cancer. His specialty is low-grade serous cancer. And in priority 2, we have 13 projects altogether that were funded. This is a very exciting area because this is where all the newest discoveries that had yet to have the opportunity to be tested fully are taking advantage of all those new models. And we're seeing if any of these novel treatments might work. So we have one project completed, lots of very exciting results coming from that one. 12 are in progress, and one of them has funded Dr. Marilyn Labrie, who you'll hear about later on as well, or later on she'll give a summary of that. She's a new investigator, so we're constantly trying to bring new scientists into the fold. Some of those treatments that are being tested are immune-based or immunotherapies. Several are targeted inhibitors. So PARP inhibitors are an example, like olaparib are an example of a targeted inhibitor. We've got 5 more that are being tested. And then 3 novel gene targets that have never been studied before in the context of ovarian cancer. Alicia?
Thanks, Barb. So as mentioned, we've actually funded 6 clinical trials testing new treatment approaches for ovarian cancer. 3 of these trials are currently recruiting patients, and a combined 61 patients have been enrolled in OvCAN funded trials as of April 2023. So I'm going to provide a few key details on those trials that are open, and links to more information for each of these will be added to the chat for anyone who's interested in learning more. So the first trial, nicknamed ES2, focuses on testing the combination of the PARP inhibitor olaparib and another drug that promotes tumor cell death. This trial is led by Dr. Diane Provencher from the CHUM in Montreal and Dr. Helen McKay from Sunnybrook in Toronto. The very first of 30 patients has been enrolled, and now there are 3 active study sites in Quebec and Ontario. The study population includes women with recurrent metastatic high-grade serous cancer who recur greater than 6 months after platinum-based chemotherapy. The second open trial is looking at the impact of a novel inhibitor named CX5461 in patients with mutations in BRCA1 and 2, PALB2, or other homologous recombination genes. This study is led by Dr. Amit Oza at Princess Margaret Cancer Centre in Toronto, but is also active at the CHUM in Montreal, and 13 patients have been enrolled to date. The third open trial, nicknamed REVOLVE, is using real-time assessment of gene changes in tumor samples to determine the best next course of treatment after progressing on a PARP inhibitor. This trial is led by Dr. Stephanie Leroux at Princess Margaret in Toronto. And for now, this is the only site given, as you can imagine, the complex logistics of running a trial like this. 3 patients have been recruited so far, and patients must be diagnosed with recurrent high-grade serous or high-grade endometrioid to be eligible. So before I move on, it's important to note that all of these clinical trials have embedded patient partners who are providing feedback to the study teams on patient-facing material, recruitment plans, and study design. So speaking of patient partners, a crucial component to the success of OvCAN is our National Patient Partners and Research Program. This program was developed by Ovarian Cancer Canada to keep the voices of those with lived experience at the forefront of research. Our PPIR team, some of whom are pictured here, includes a diverse representation of ovarian cancer types, age, sexuality, cultural backgrounds, and geography, with each member bringing their unique perspective and shared experiences. We currently have 18 members, including 2 patient co-leads, one of whom will be co-moderating a session with me tonight, with 6 team members being featured at this research forum. We're also looking to expand our team, so these details will be provided later in tonight's program for anyone who is interested in this kind of thing. Finally, our team of patient partners has been very busy over the past several months. These are just a few examples shown here. So 2 of our patient partners, Starla Fiddler and Donna Pepin, were featured in a special series of episodes by the GOSH podcast, produced by the Gynecologic Cancer Initiative in BC. And these podcasts can be found on the Ovarian Cancer Canada website. 2 OCC run Bridging the Gap sessions here are also underway. So these sessions are informal get to know you meetings for research trainees or early investigators, as well as patient partners. And this really builds relationships and fosters future collaborations. Starla Fiddler, pictured here, also participated in provincial research advocacy in Saskatchewan. And our patient partner from Manitoba, Sylvia, very small picture here, co-presented with Ovarian Cancer Canada's research coordinator, Dr. Jessica Lawson, at the Manitoba Ovarian Cancer Research Symposium. Next, one of our patient partners, Julie Pauling, who you'll also hear from tonight, recently spoke to 160 high school students at the Let's Talk Cancer event in Ottawa, which you'll hear more about later. And finally, scientific and patient leads of PPIR were invited to participate in a think tank on patient engagement in Atlantic Canada in May. And this really highlights our growing reputation as leaders in this field. So back to Barb.
Thanks, Alicia. I hope that you are getting as excited as I was at the very beginning of OvCAN and being able to see the tremendous progress that has been made. We've been very focused, and we couldn't have done it without patients guiding us every step of the way. But we have to think of what comes next, and what comes next is what we've called Beyond OvCAN. So it is a vision to contain, to maintain, to sustain the research program that has been developed by Ovarian Cancer Canada in OvCAN to ensure that we continue that work for another 5 years at least, from 2024 to 2029. The goal is to continue to have innovative, high quality, made in Canada scientific research, but to extend it beyond treatment, which is where our focus is right in OvCAN, to include prevention, diagnosis, and survivorship as well. So broaden the mandate considerably. We also want to maintain some of the things that made us special in the research community in Canada. That is making us collaborative more than competitive and allowing us to develop a national scientific toolbox, but add in other elements that have started with OvCAN. I think we can make them even more, give them greater strength, let's say, and beyond OvCAN, and particularly the power of the patient voice always has to be there, and including more attention to the social determinants of health. Overall, the goals of Beyond OvCAN would be to take what we have developed so far and use that as planting the seeds of progress for future development in all areas of research beyond treatment. So that includes decreasing the incidence by prevention, decreasing the incidence of late diagnosis, which is one of the most challenging features that we have for this disease, increasing equity in care and research, and increasing the quality of life for women who are affected by this disease. I do need to say thank you. We couldn't have done this without the initial investment from federal government, but also all the other partners that have stepped up to recognize that this gave us the opportunity to expand the amount of research that could be done in a very focused way. All our partners, and particularly the patients who've helped to guide the research right from the beginning, who've helped us decide which projects get funded and which do not. They play such an important role in OvCAN, and I hope to see that continue for at least another 5 years. Thank you for your attention.